Welcome back to the channel everyone, and if this is your first time here, welcome. You've picked one of the most fascinating stories in American coin history to join us on today, because what you're about to hear is the kind of story that turns pocket change into legend and transforms an ordinary copper penny into something whispered about in auction halls, collector forums, and late-night treasure hunting dreams. And today we're diving deep into the unbelievable tale of the 1952 D. Lincoln Wheat penny, a coin that on the surface looks like millions of others struck in the early 1950s but which, under the right circumstances, with the right errors, mistakes, and mysterious mint anomalies, has been rumored to carry a staggering potential value of $73 million, a number so shocking that it immediately raises eyebrows and sparks debate, curiosity, and obsession among collectors worldwide. And to truly understand how a humble 1-cent coin could ever be spoken of in the same breath as fine art masterpieces or rare diamonds, we need to go back in time, immerse ourselves in the post-war atmosphere of the United States, examine the Denver Mint's production environment in 1952, explore the nature of minting errors and how they occur, and then unravel each specific flaw, mistake, and rare possibility that could elevate a simple wheat penny into one of the most valuable numismatic treasures imaginable, because value in the coin world is never about face value alone. It's about rarity, condition, story, and the convergence of circumstances so unlikely that they almost feel mythical, and the 1952 D. wheat penny sits right at the intersection of all of these factors, beginning with the historical context of its creation, as 1952 was a year defined by transition, tension, and industrial pressure, with the Korean War ongoing, Cold War anxieties simmering, and American mints operating at high capacity to meet the nation's demand for circulating coinage. Especially cents, which were used heavily in everyday commerce at a time when a penny still had real purchasing power, and the Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark beneath the date on Lincoln cents, was producing millions upon millions of coins using aging equipment, worn dies, and a workforce under pressure to maintain output, a perfect recipe for mistakes. And while most of those mistakes were minor and unnoticed, occasionally something extraordinary slipped through, something that should never have left the mint, something that decades later would ignite speculation and drive collectors wild. And that is where the 1952 D. wheat penny enters the conversation, because although standard examples of this coin are common and generally worth only a few cents to a few dollars depending on condition, a tiny fraction may exist with errors so extreme, so rare, and so dramatic that they redefine what is possible in the realm of coin collecting, starting with the most discussed and controversial possibility of all, the wrong planchet error, which occurs when a coin is struck on a metal blank intended for a different denomination or composition, and in the early 1950s, planchet control was not as foolproof as it is today, meaning that a cent blank could theoretically be replaced by a foreign planchet, an experimental alloy, or even a leftover blank from another denomination. And if a 1952 D. wheat penny were struck on an unauthorized or experimental metal, such as bronze of an unusual composition, or even something as extreme as a silver or steel planchet not officially recorded for that year, the coin would instantly become one of the greatest rarities in American numismatics, especially if metallurgical testing confirmed its authenticity and origin, because wrong planchet errors are among the most valuable categories of mint errors, and their value increases exponentially when paired with a popular series like the Lincoln cent and a mysterious lack of official documentation, and this is where speculation around the $73 million valuation begins, because collectors aren't just paying for metal or rarity, they're paying for the unanswered questions, the possibility that the coin represents a secret experiment, an undocumented mistake, or a one-of-a-kind survivor that challenges what we think we know about mint history. And then there is the possibility of a dramatic off-metal strike combined with a major die error, such as a double die obverse or reverse, which occurs when a die receives multiple misaligned impressions during its creation, resulting in doubling visible on the coin's design elements, and while minor doubling is relatively common and often dismissed as mechanical doubling, true hub doubling is rare and highly prized, and if a 1952 DeWitt penny were discovered with strong, unmistakable doubling on Lincoln's profile, the date, or the inscriptions, especially if combined with other errors, its desirability would skyrocket, because collectors crave bold, visible errors that can be seen with the naked eye, errors that tell a story of chaos inside the minting process, and the Denver Mint is not traditionally known for producing famous doubled dies in the Lincoln Cent series, which only adds to the intrigue, because rarity within a rarity amplifies value. And then there is the realm of transitional errors, which are among the most fascinating and controversial in numismatics, involving coins struck during a changeover in design, composition, or process. And while 1952 is not officially recognized as a major transition year for the Lincoln Cent, that doesn't mean unusual experiments or leftover materials weren't present at the mint, especially given the ongoing adjustments to metal supplies during and after wartime. And if a 1952 DeWitt penny were found to contain an alloy inconsistent with official specifications, or features indicative of a transitional experiment that was never meant to leave the mint, it would raise enormous questions about what was happening behind closed doors at the Denver facility, and collectors are drawn to these mysteries like moths to a flame, because they suggest hidden chapters of history waiting to be uncovered. And beyond planchet and die errors, we must also consider strike errors of an extreme nature, such as a multiple struck coin with severe misalignment, or a broad strike that obliterates design boundaries, or even a coin struck through foreign material that leaves dramatic voids or impressions. And while many strike errors are interesting but not extraordinarily valuable, those that combine multiple error types on a single coin are incredibly rare, and a 1952 DeWitt penny exhibiting a combination of wrong planchet, multiple strikes, and die doubling would be so unusual that it could stand alone in the entire Lincoln Cent series. And uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value, because when a coin has no direct comparables, the market is forced to define its worth based on demand rather than precedent, and that is how valuations reach eye-watering levels, because when two or more ultra-wealthy collectors want the same one-of-a-kind piece, price becomes almost irrelevant. And then there is the factor of condition, which cannot be overstated, because even the rarest error coin loses significant value if it is heavily worn or damaged after leaving the mint. But if a 1952 DeWitt penny with monumental errors were somehow preserved in near-perfect mint state, with original luster, sharp details, and minimal handling marks, it would be nothing short of miraculous, and miracles carry premiums, because they defy the odds. And imagine a coin struck in 1952, mishandled by the mint, somehow overlooked by inspectors, released into circulation, and yet preserved for decades without significant wear, only to be rediscovered by a collector who recognizes its importance. That narrative alone adds layers of intangible value, because collectors are storytellers at heart, and the best coins tell the best stories. And then there is the question of authentication and controversy, because any coin rumored to be worth $73 million would face intense scrutiny, skepticism, and debate, with experts examining every micron of its surface, every trace of its metal composition, every aspect of its provenance. And that scrutiny itself adds to the coin's mystique, because controversy fuels interest, and interest fuels demand, and demand fuels value, especially in the age of the internet, where a single discovery can go viral, igniting global fascination overnight. And the Lincoln Cent series is uniquely positioned for this kind of frenzy because it is one of the most collected and beloved coin series in the world, familiar to generations of Americans who have handled wheat pennies without ever imagining that one could be worth more than a mansion, and that emotional connection matters. Next. 1946 wheat penny today. Whether you're a long-time collector or someone who just pulled a penny from your pocket and wondered if it could change your life, you're in exactly the right place, because today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating, mysterious, and jaw-dropping stories in American coin history, the legendary 1946 wheat penny. A simple-looking copper coin that most people would pass over without a second thought, yet under the right circumstances has been rumored, discussed, debated, and dreamed about as being worth an astonishing $34 million. Yes, a single penny potentially valued higher than luxury mansions, private islands, and rare supercars. And the reason behind this unbelievable value lies not in magic or myth but in a complex web of historical timing, minting chaos, rare errors, overlooked mistakes, metal composition anomalies, and once-in-a-lifetime possibilities that make the 1946 wheat penny one of the most intriguing coins ever struck by the United States Mint. So settle in, relax, and get ready, because this story isn't just about a coin, it's about how history, human error, and sheer chance can collide to turn something ordinary into something priceless. And by the end of this journey, you might never look at pocket change the same way again. Now, to truly understand why a 1946 wheat penny could be worth $34 million, we first need to travel back in time to the world in which it was born. The year 1946 was a turning point for the United States and the entire world. World War II had just ended. Soldiers were returning home, factories were transitioning from wartime production to peacetime needs, and the U.S. Mint itself was undergoing massive operational changes. During the war years, copper was a critical strategic metal used for ammunition and electrical wiring, which led to the famous steel pennies of 1943 and various alloy experiments in surrounding years. By 1944 and 1945, the Mint had returned to a copper-based alloy using recycled shell casings, but by 1946, the situation was still far from normal. Supply chains were strained, equipment was worn down from non-stop wartime use, and human workers were exhausted after years of high-pressure production demands. All of this created the perfect environment for mistakes to happen, and in the world of coin collecting, mistakes are not flaws. They are gold mines. The 1946 wheat penny was struck during this transitional chaos, and while millions of normal examples were produced, a tiny number were born different, coins that carried within them errors so rare, so dramatic, and so historically significant that they became legends. One of the most important factors contributing to the potential $34 million valuation is the possibility of wrong planchet errors. A wrong planchet error occurs when a coin is struck on a blank intended for a different denomination or composition, and in 1946, with leftover planchets from previous years and experimental alloys still floating around mint facilities, the chance of a penny being struck on an incorrect metal was very real. Imagine a 1946 wheat penny struck on a planchet meant for a silver dime, or an experimental alloy never meant for circulation. Such a coin would instantly become one of the rarest known U.S. coins, and rarity is the heartbeat of value. But it doesn't stop there. Another jaw-dropping possibility is a transitional error involving metal composition. While 1943 steel cents are famous, the years surrounding them are equally fascinating because the Mint was experimenting, adjusting, and sometimes accidentally mixing materials. A 1946 wheat penny struck on a leftover steel planchet, or on a planchet with an unusual copper-to-zinc ratio, would defy expectations and rewrite numismatic records. Such a coin would not only be rare, it would be unique, and uniqueness is where values skyrocket into the millions, especially when collectors and museums compete for ownership. But metal composition is just one piece of the puzzle. Die errors play an enormous role in the legend of the 1946 wheat penny. During this era, dies were hand-prepared and used far beyond what would be considered acceptable today. Cracks, breaks, doubled impressions, and misalignments were common, yet only a few survived unnoticed. A dramatic doubled die obverse, where Lincoln's portrait, the date, or the inscriptions appear clearly doubled, could elevate a coin from common to priceless, especially if the doubling is bold and unmistakable. And while minor doubling exists on many coins, a true doubled die from 1946 would be exceptionally rare, particularly one that escaped detection for decades. Then there are off-center strikes, where the coin design is not properly aligned on the planchet. Most off-center coins are discarded or caught early, but a perfectly dramatic off-center strike showing a full date and mint details could be worth enormous sums, and when combined with other errors, such as a wrong planchet or doubled die, the value multiplies exponentially. Another possibility that fuels the $34 million valuation is the existence of a 1946 wheat penny with a missing or altered mint mark. While 1946 pennies were struck in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, mint marks were manually punched into dies, which opened the door for errors like missing mint marks, repunched mint marks, or even over mint marks. Imagine a 1946 D penny where the D mint mark was never punched, or was punched over another mark, or even struck with a previously used die from an earlier year. Such anomalies would send shockwaves through the numismatic community, because they challenge established mint records and expectations, and when something challenges the known historical narrative, collectors pay extraordinary sums to own that piece of history. One of the most tantalizing possibilities is the existence of a 1946 wheat penny struck using an experimental die or prototype die never intended for public circulation. During the post-war period, the mint tested new hub designs, relief depths, and engraving techniques. Most of these experimental pieces were destroyed or locked away, but history has shown time and time again that a few always slip through the cracks. If a 1946 wheat penny were discovered with design elements that do not match known production dies, such as altered wheat stalk details, unusual lettering, or a modified Lincoln portrait, it would be classified as a pattern or experimental strike, and pattern coins routinely sell for millions, especially when tied to major historical transitions. Then there's the topic of proof errors. Although proof coins were not officially produced for pennies in 1946, there is always the remote possibility of a proof-like or special strike created for testing or presentation purposes. A mirror-like finish combined with error characteristics would create a coin so rare that assigning a value becomes almost impossible, because it would stand alone in its category, and when something stands alone, wealthy collectors set the price, not the market. Another critical element behind the massive valuation is condition. Most 1946 wheat pennies are heavily worn, having circulated through decades of commerce. But if an error coin survived in near-perfect or mint-state condition, untouched, uncleaned, and preserved by sheer luck, its value would explode. Condition is the multiplier that turns thousands into millions, and millions into legends. Imagine a unique error coin in pristine condition, with full original luster, sharp strike details, and no signs of circulation. Such a coin would be the crown jewel of any collection on Earth, and this is where the $34 million figure becomes plausible rather than fantasy. Provenance also plays a huge role. If a 1946 wheat penny could be traced back to a known mint employee, a wartime collection, or a sealed roll discovered decades later, its story would add another layer of value. Collectors don't just buy coins, they buy stories, and the richer the story, the higher the price. Another factor that cannot be ignored is the psychology of rarity. Even if only one such coin exists, its perceived rarity combined with intense demand can drive prices to unimaginable heights, especially in an era where wealthy collectors view rare coins as alternative investments and cultural artifacts rather than mere collectibles. Auction houses thrive on competition, and when two or more bidders absolutely must own a one-of-a-kind coin. Next, 1951 wheat penny today, because what we are about to explore together is one of the most fascinating and mysterious stories in the world of American coin collecting. A story that proves how an ordinary-looking penny hiding in plain sight can secretly be worth more than mansions, luxury cars, and even private islands. And today we are diving deep into the legendary 1951 wheat penny, a humble copper coin that many people have held, spent, ignored, or even lost between couch cushions. Yet according to collectors, rumors, and extraordinary discoveries, certain rare versions of this coin are believed to be worth as much as $23 million due to a combination of errors, minting mistakes, historical circumstances, and unbelievable possibilities that turn a simple 1-cent piece into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. And as we begin this journey, I want you to imagine yourself holding a small brown penny dated 1951, feeling its weight, noticing the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the 2 wheat stalks on the back, never suspecting that this tiny disc of metal could change your life forever, because that is exactly what makes this story so powerful, the idea that something so common could become so valuable purely because of imperfections that were never meant to exist. And to understand how a 1951 wheat penny could reach a staggering valuation like $23 million, we have to go back in time to the early 1950s, a period when the United States Mint was producing massive quantities of pennies to support a growing post-war economy. Factories were booming, people were spending money again, and demand for coinage was high, which meant mints were working fast, presses were running long hours, and quality control was sometimes pushed to its limits. And whenever speed meets pressure, mistakes are bound to happen, and those mistakes are where legends are born, because the 1951 wheat penny was struck at multiple mints including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each with its own equipment, workers, dies, and unique opportunities for error. And among the most valuable possibilities are pennies struck with dramatic die errors that completely transform the appearance of the coin, such as doubled dies where the design appears doubled or shadowed due to a misalignment during the die creation process. And in some rumored examples of the 1951 wheat penny, the doubling is so strong and so clear on Lincoln's portrait, the date, and even the word liberty that it is impossible to ignore, creating a visually stunning coin that instantly catches the attention of expert collectors who understand how rare such dramatic doubling truly is, because unlike minor machine doubling, which is common and not valuable, true double dies are created when the die itself is impressed more than once at slightly different angles, permanently embedding the error into every coin struck from that die. And if such a double die existed for the 1951 wheat penny and escaped detection, it would instantly become one of the rarest Lincoln cents in existence, driving values into the millions, especially if only 1 or 2 examples survived. But double dies are only the beginning of what could push a 1951 wheat penny toward that jaw-dropping $23 million figure. Because another extraordinary possibility lies in off-metal strikes, which occur when a coin is struck on the wrong type of metal planchet, and during the early 1950s the mint was handling various metals for different denominations, and while pennies were supposed to be struck on copper planchets, there is a tantalizing possibility that a small number of 1951 wheat pennies were accidentally struck on planchets intended for other coins, such as silver dimes or even experimental alloys, creating coins with completely different weights, colors, and compositions. And an off-metal 1951 wheat penny struck on a silver planchet would not only be visually shocking but historically priceless, because it would represent a mint error that defied multiple layers of quality control. And when such errors are confirmed by professional grading services through metallurgical testing, they become the kind of pieces that museums want and elite collectors compete fiercely to own, pushing values into unprecedented territory. And then there is the possibility of wrong date or wrong mint errors, where a die intended for 1 year or 1 mint is mistakenly used in another, and although extremely rare, such mistakes have happened in U.S. coinage history. And if a 1951 wheat penny were discovered bearing a mint mark that does not belong or showing evidence of a transitional die from another year, it would rewrite what we know about the production of Lincoln cents during that era, making the coin not just valuable but historically significant, which is a key ingredient in multi-million-dollar valuations, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying stories, mysteries, and unanswered questions, and nothing fuels demand like a coin that challenges official mint records. And speaking of mysteries, one of the most intriguing possibilities surrounding the 1951 wheat penny is the idea of experimental strikes or clandestine errors that were never meant to leave the mint, coins that were struck during testing, adjustment, or experimentation and somehow slipped into circulation, and these coins often exhibit unusual characteristics such as altered weights, unusual surface textures, or hybrid designs that do not match standard production. And if such an experimental 1951 wheat penny were authenticated, it would be in a category all its own, because experimental coins are among the most coveted items in numismatics due to their rarity and the secrecy surrounding their creation. And beyond striking errors, the condition of the coin plays a massive role in pushing its value into the stratosphere, because even a common penny can become incredibly valuable if it exists in a state of preservation that is virtually unheard of. And for a 1951 wheat penny to command a price like $23 million, it would likely need to be in absolute pristine condition, possibly graded as the finest known example with perfect surfaces, full original mint luster, sharp details, and no signs of wear. And such coins are often referred to as condition census pieces, meaning they sit at the very top of the quality scale for that issue, and collectors are willing to pay astonishing premiums to own the best of the best, especially when no other comparable examples exist, and when rarity, error, and condition combine in a single coin, the result can be explosive, because another factor that adds fuel to the fire is provenance, the documented history of who owned the coin and where it has been, and a 1951 wheat penny that can be traced back to an old collection, a mint employee's estate, or a historic hoard, adds an extra layer of allure and legitimacy, making collectors even more confident in its authenticity and more willing to bid aggressively. And as stories circulate about a legendary 1951 wheat penny discovered in an inherited collection or tucked away in a forgotten bank box for decades, the myth grows, and myths drive markets just as much as facts, because people are drawn to the romance of discovery, the idea that somewhere out there, maybe even in their own pocket change, a coin of unimaginable value is waiting to be found, and that psychological element cannot be underestimated, because it keeps collectors searching, examining, and dreaming, which sustains demand and pushes prices higher whenever a true rarity surfaces. And another error that could catapult a 1951 wheat penny into the multi-million-dollar realm is a dramatic die cap or brockage error, where one coin becomes stuck to a die and impresses its design onto another coin, resulting in a piece with missing or distorted features. And while many die caps are known, extremely well preserved and visually striking examples from specific years are exceptionally rare. And if a 1951 wheat penny die cap with full details and original surfaces were discovered, it would be a show-stopping piece that would dominate any auction it appeared in, especially if it were unique or one of only a handful known. And uniqueness is another critical driver of value, because collectors are willing to pay almost any price to own something no one else can have. Next, 1955 wheat penny. Today we are diving deep into one of the most fascinating and mysterious coins ever produced by the United States Mint, a humble piece of copper that looks ordinary at first glance but has captured the imagination of collectors around the world, the legendary 1955 wheat penny, a coin that in rare circumstances has been rumored, speculated, and passionately debated as being worth as much as $12 million. And as we begin this journey together, imagine for a moment holding a single penny between your fingers, a coin that once bought candy, sat forgotten in jars, slipped through vending machines, and was casually exchanged for coffee change, yet hidden within that tiny disk of metal are mistakes, errors, and historical accidents so dramatic that they transformed a simple 1-cent coin into a symbol of numismatic legend, a story that begins in the bustling mid-1950s. A time of booming industry, post-war optimism, and massive coin production across the United States, when the Lincoln wheat penny was still a daily part of American life, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the front and the iconic wheat stalks on the back, a design that had already been in circulation for decades. And yet in 1955, something went astonishingly wrong inside the walls of the Philadelphia Mint, something that no one could have predicted would create one of the most famous mint errors in history. an error so visually striking that even people with no coin knowledge at all could instantly tell that something was different, because the most famous and valuable version of the 1955 wheat penny is known for its dramatic doubling, a powerful doubling of the date, the letters, and Lincoln's inscriptions, where the numbers and words appear almost shadowed or stamped twice, giving the impression that the coin itself is vibrating or echoing. And this was not a subtle mistake, this was bold, obvious, and unmistakable, caused by a misalignment during the die creation process when the hub impressed the design onto the die more than once without proper alignment, resulting in a doubled die that would go on to strike thousands of coins before the error was noticed, and these coins were released into circulation rather than being destroyed, instantly setting the stage for one of the greatest error coin stories ever told, because unlike microscopic flaws that require magnification, the 1955 doubled die penny practically announces itself to the naked eye, with the date appearing thick and overlapping, the word liberty showing clear separation, and the motto "I in God we trust" looking as if it has been stamped twice in rapid succession. And while many error coins exist, very few are so bold, so dramatic, and so easy to recognize, which is why this penny has become legendary. But the journey from an interesting error to a coin potentially valued in the millions involves far more than just doubling, because collectors have long speculated that within the already rare population of 1955 double die pennies, there may exist ultra-perfect examples, coins that escaped circulation entirely, coins with pristine surfaces, blazing original luster, flawless rims, sharp strikes, and untouched copper color, coins that represent the absolute pinnacle of condition rarity. And in the world of coin collecting, condition is everything. Because while many 1955 double die pennies exist in worn or circulated condition, the number of examples that survived in near perfect or perfect state is astonishingly small, and as condition grades climb into the highest levels, values rise exponentially, driven by intense competition among elite collectors, registry set builders, and investors who understand that owning the finest known example of a legendary coin is not just about money, but about prestige, legacy, and historical ownership. And when rumors of a $12 million valuation emerge, they are often tied not to just any double die penny, but to a hypothetical or privately held specimen graded at the absolute top of the scale, a coin so perfect that it stands alone, unmatched by any other known example, creating a situation where value is not determined by price guides or past auction results, but by what a single determined buyer might be willing to pay to own something truly unique. And this is where the mythology of the 1955 wheat penny grows even larger, because beyond the famous double die, collectors also hunt for secondary errors, subtle variations, and unusual characteristics that can dramatically affect value, including off-center strikes where the design is shifted, clipped planchets where a portion of the coin is missing due to a cutting error, wrong metal compositions where the penny may have been struck on a foreign or incorrect planchet, die cracks that create raised lines across the surface, and even transitional errors involving leftover materials from previous or subsequent minting processes. And while these errors are rare on their own, finding one combined with the already famous 1955 double die would create a numismatic unicorn, a coin so rare that it defies standard classification, and such a discovery would ignite bidding wars, headlines, and intense scrutiny from grading services, historians, and collectors alike, further fueling speculation about astronomical values. Because the 1955 wheat penny occupies a special place in the hearts of collectors not just because of its errors, but because of its timing, released during an era when Americans were handling coins every day, meaning many examples were discovered by ordinary people who noticed something strange and set them aside, creating a grassroots legend that spread through newspapers, coin shops, and word of mouth, and stories abound of children finding these pennies in change, adults pulling them from bank rolls, and collectors eagerly trading for them long before the internet existed, making the coin a symbol of discovery, curiosity, and the thrill of finding treasure in everyday life. and as decades passed, the 1955 double-die penny only grew in fame, becoming one of the first era coins that non-collectors could easily identify, turning it into a gateway coin that introduced countless people to the hobby, and this widespread recognition adds to its value, because coins with strong cultural recognition often command higher premiums than equally rare but lesser-known errors, and when a coin becomes iconic, its story becomes as valuable as the metal itself, and the story of the 1955 wheat penny is filled with intrigue, debate, and unanswered questions, including how many truly high-grade examples exist, how many remain undiscovered in old collections or estates, and whether there are still unknown varieties waiting to be authenticated, because even today, new discoveries occasionally surface, sending ripples through the numismatic community and reigniting interest in a coin many thought had already revealed all its secrets, and beyond the physical errors, there is also the psychological factor of value, because when collectors believe that a coin represents the pinnacle of a category, they are willing to stretch far beyond traditional price limits, especially when scarcity meets demand at the highest level, and the idea of a $12 million penny may sound unbelievable, but history has shown that when a coin combines legendary status, extreme rarity, flawless condition, and global recognition, prices can reach levels that once seemed impossible, and this is reinforced by the fact that other rare coins, once thought to be worth mere thousands, have shattered records as markets evolved, wealth increased, and collectors sought tangible assets with historical significance, and the 1955 wheat penny, with its dramatic error and unmistakable appearance, stands as one of the strongest candidates for such extreme valuation, especially if a single example could be proven to be the finest known, free from even the tiniest imperfection, untouched by circulation, and preserved in its original mint state glow, and the possibilities do not end there, because some experts speculate about experimental strikes, test dies, or presentation pieces that may have been produced during the chaotic period when the error was discovered, coins that may never have entered circulation and could exist in private hands or institutional collections, undocumented and unseen. And if such a coin were to surface, bearing the double-die characteristics but with unique features separating it from all known examples, the numismatic world would erupt. Last. Today we're going to explore one of the most intriguing and highly coveted coins in American numismatics, the 1945 wheat penny, a coin whose extraordinary rarity and astonishing value have captured the imagination of collectors and investors alike, with some specimens reportedly fetching up to $6 million. And what makes this particular penny so exceptional lies not just in its age or its composition, but in the very errors and mistakes that occurred during its production, making it a prime example of how a seemingly ordinary piece of currency can transform into a treasure of immense historical and monetary significance. The 1945 wheat penny, officially minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, was produced at a time when the United States was emerging from the devastation of World War II, a period during which metal shortages and production pressures created an environment ripe for minting anomalies, and this particular year saw some remarkable deviations from the norm that numismatists now consider priceless. One of the most famous and valuable versions of the 1945 wheat penny is the so-called 1945 steel cent. Although the standard issue was bronze, a small number of pennies were accidentally struck on leftover planchets intended for 1943 steel cents due to a mismanagement of mint supplies, resulting in coins that were both unusual in composition and visually striking. These steel pennies are magnetic, heavier, and have a different coloration than their bronze counterparts, creating immediate intrigue among collectors who understand that such an anomaly represents an unintentional deviation from standard mint procedures. Another significant source of value in 1945 wheat pennies comes from double-die errors, where the obverse or reverse design is struck more than once, causing certain letters, numbers, or elements of Lincoln's portrait or the wheat ears to appear doubled or shadowed. These double-die errors occur when the die itself has been misaligned or struck more than once during its creation, producing a coin that is visually distinct and extremely scarce. Collectors pay exorbitant amounts for coins exhibiting clear doubling on the date, the motto, "In God We Trust," or Lincoln's profile, as each imperfection is a one-of-a-kind fingerprint of the minting process. Furthermore, the 1945 wheat penny is known for die cracks and die breaks, where small fissures or chips in the die create raised lines or blobs on the coin's surface. These seemingly minor defects can dramatically increase a coin's value because they are finite and cannot be replicated. Every die crack is a signature of a specific die at a specific moment in history, and as such, coins bearing these errors become historical artifacts in their own right. Another fascinating aspect that contributes to the 1945 penny's astronomical valuation is off-center strikes, which occur when the coin blank is improperly positioned in the press, resulting in portions of Lincoln's image or the wheat reverse missing entirely or shifted. The more severe the off-center strike, the rarer the coin, with collectors willing to pay significant premiums for examples where a substantial portion of the design is absent. This type of error transforms a mass-produced coin into an unusual and highly desirable collectible. And when you combine off-center strikes with die doubling or metal composition errors, the coin becomes exponentially more valuable. Rare minting anomalies from 1945 also include lamination errors, where the metal itself separates or flakes due to impurities or incorrect alloying, producing spots or missing sections on the coin. Such physical flaws, though considered defects in ordinary currency, are highly prized in numismatics because they document the fallibility of industrial processes and the uniqueness of each coin. Collectors view these anomalies as tangible history, encapsulated in a small copper disc, and over time, the scarcity of such examples has contributed to a market where 1945 wheat pennies can command prices in the millions, especially when preserved in high grades with minimal wear. Another layer of desirability comes from the human stories surrounding these coins. Some were found in circulation decades after their minting, tucked away in coin collections, drawers, or even pocket change, only to be rediscovered and authenticated by experts. These tales add a narrative dimension to the coins, transforming them from mere currency into legendary artifacts with provenance that collectors value immensely. And the excitement of the hunt for these pennies drives prices ever higher, as auctions for certified specimens attract worldwide attention, particularly when the coins exhibit multiple errors, pristine surfaces, or historical documentation. Grading services such as PCGS or NGC play a crucial role in establishing authenticity and condition, with high-grade 1945 wheat pennies with notable errors consistently achieving multi-million-dollar results. Adding to the mystique is the fact that some 1945 pennies were subjected to post-mint mishaps, including cleaning, corrosion, or accidental bending, yet those coins that survived in near-perfect condition are exceedingly rare, making them even more desirable to collectors. The interplay of rarity, historical context, metal composition, striking anomalies, and condition collectively contributes to the 1945 wheat penny's status as a numismatic icon. And it's important to note that not all errors are equal. Subtle differences in die alignment, doubling intensity, or composition can drastically affect value, meaning a collector must exercise extreme care and expertise when evaluating a coin. And this meticulous attention to detail underscores why some 1945 wheat pennies have achieved valuations as high as $6 million. Beyond the technical errors, the 1945 penny embodies a tangible connection to a pivotal moment in history, representing not only the post-war economy but also the technological limitations and pressures faced by the U.S. Mint at that time. Each scratch, crack, or misstrike is a historical footprint, a silent witness to the era's production challenges, and the scarcity of these anomalies ensures that collectors must compete fiercely to acquire them, with bidding often escalating into the millions. The coin's story is further enriched by the fact that some 1945 pennies were part of experimental dies or trial strikes, meaning they were created to test new procedures or materials, and surviving examples from such experiments are exceptionally rare and thus incredibly valuable. In some instances, these experimental or mistruck pennies have unique features, such as variations in lettering, spacing, or metal content, making them stand out even among other errors. The presence of such a specimen in a collection can elevate its prestige and financial worth tremendously. Moreover, the 1945 wheat penny has inspired generations of collectors to seek out other rare errors from the same period, creating a cascading effect on the coin's market value as demand continues to outstrip supply. The very idea that a simple 1-cent coin can harbor such complexity and potential for high valuation fascinates both seasoned numismatists and casual enthusiasts, drawing attention from media outlets, auction houses, and collectors globally, and every sale or discovery reinforces the penny's legendary status. Experts frequently analyze high-value specimens using advanced tools, such as microscopes, X-ray fluorescence, and metallic analysis, to confirm the presence of genuine errors, misstrikes, or composition anomalies, and these scientific methods provide collectors with assurance that the coin's reported multi-million-dollar value is legitimate. In addition, the provenance of a coin, its documented history of ownership, can dramatically enhance its market value, particularly if it was part of a renowned collection, discovered under interesting circumstances, or authenticated by multiple grading authorities. All these factors coalesce to make the 1945 wheat penny not merely a collectible but an investment, one that combines rarity, historical significance, physical anomalies, and documented provenance into a coin that can legitimately reach a valuation of $6 million or more, and this value is not static, as the market for rare coins is influenced by collector demand, economic conditions, and the discovery of new specimens, meaning that a 1945 wheat penny that today might be valued at $6 million could increase even further in the future, especially as fewer error coins remain in circulation and more enter private collections. The allure of this coin is further heightened by the stories of accidental discoveries, such as coins found in old coin rolls.